Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. Thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy workday to spend about 40 minutes with me today learning about our proctoring solution. My name is Nick Laboda, and I'll be doing today's presentation. And today we're going to cover a couple of different applications that you can use to prevent cheating online. We're going to talk about our LockDown browser solution, which is a browser designed to prevent cheating on the device that the student would be using for testing. And then we're going to transition and talk about Respondus Monitor, which is going to incorporate a webcam component to the LockDown browser technology to make sure that we're verifying student identity on an assessment, and also that we're confirming that students aren't able to use other external resources or devices to be able to circumvent the LockDown browser security on that machine. So their LockDown browser can be used as a standalone application. So for your hybrid courses, which I believe is what you're teaching right now, if you're doing testing either in a computer lab or a testing center, maybe in a classroom situation with a proctor present, well then the LockDown browser would be ideal for that type of testing environment. But it sounds like you're expanding some of your courses into fully online capacity. And if that's the case, well, then the webcam component is what's going to prevent cheating from home. So that's really where the two pieces kind of come together to kind of form this all-around proctoring solution. So what we're going to do is I'd like to share with you how it works both from the instructor perspective, because I think it's really important to see how easy it is to enable the use of this setting on a quiz, but then also from the student perspective, so you can get an understanding of what the student's experience is going to be like in actually taking an assessment using our browser. So what I'd like to do first of all is do all of this inside Canvas, since this is the LMS that you guys currently license. And we're going to start off as an instructor and show you how easy it is to enable the setting. So when I log into Canvas as an instructor, when you go into any course that you teach, you can see I have multiple courses that I teach here. Over in your menu bar, over on the left-hand margin of the screen, and it's usually down towards the bottom of the menu bar, you will see this LockDown browser dashboard. Now what this dashboard will do is display all the quizzes that you have in this particular course. So when I click on the dashboard, you will see every quiz I've already created over on the left. To the right of that, you'll see there's a LockDown browser column. And then to the right of that, you'll see that there's this Respondus Monitor webcam column. So from here is where you enable the use of these tools. So the first thing to do is decide what quiz do you want to require with the use of this technology. So if I take a look at this Geography Week 1 quiz, from the drop-down menu, you'll see there's a Modify Settings option. And then you'll see the requirement to enable LockDown browser for this exam. And as I start to click on these settings, you're going to start to see some additional settings start to expand in line. The first LockDown browser setting that you'll see is called a password setting, or I think Canvas calls it an access code. If you decide to use this, and again, keep in mind this is optional. You'll even see it says optional in parentheses. If you enter a password here, what it will do is it will force the student to have to type in that password before they can get to your Canvas quiz. So really all it's doing is putting one more layer of security in front of the assessment. Also under advanced settings, there are some additional advanced settings for LockDown browser. We have the ability to keep the student locked into the browser until the exam is complete. We have an iPad solution. So for those students that you want to allow the use of an iPad, all you need to do is check a box, and then this will again free up that device for use with both of these applications. I know there's some math science folks, maybe some nursing that might be on today's webinar. So if you require the use of a calculator, I know each of those departments might use a calculator in some capacity, obviously. We have a couple different options to choose from. Today's demonstration, I'll use the more robust one because that would probably be the one you would use more so than not. And then by default, printing is disabled. However, in a very rare situation, you may want to allow printing. And if that's the case, you would just simply check this box. And then this would allow the student to print the assessment and then hand it in as maybe a possible hard copy backup. But by default, printing is disabled, but I figured I would just point that setting out in case you're wondering. All of these settings have an explain link next to them. So if you're not really quite sure how these settings work or how they're intended to work, you can simply either hover over to get a more thorough explanation, or if the explanation requires a little bit more depth, you can simply click on the explain link and it would give you some additional information regarding that setting. Okay? Now these are my lockdown browser settings, so I'm deciding to use a couple today. And then below, you'll see that there's monitor webcam settings. So the default here is to not require Respondus monitor for the exam. So currently, if you're doing hybrid courses and you're doing most of the testing in the classroom or the lab, then all you would need to really do is hit save and close, and you would be able to simply use the lockdown browser on its own. So you can see it says the week 1 quiz has the lockdown browser requirement, and it's required in green, and it's all set up to go. However, if you're using lockdown, or excuse me, if you're taking this assessment in a fully online capacity, well then we have the ability to add Respondus monitor a couple of different ways. So you can either require it for everybody, which is this option here, and basically what this will do is force every single one of your students to use this technology. And this would be the case, if you are teaching a fully online course and you rarely see your students, this would be the option that you would apply. However, if you're still teaching that hybrid environment, but you want to give students the ability to still have that fully online experience, if they have that choice made available to them, then you can allow them to either use Respondus monitor from home, or if they prefer to come on campus, or maybe you have a preference for those students to come on campus, then they could simply come on campus and do lockdown browser testing instead. So this is simply offering them a choice, whereas this is basically telling them this is what you're going to use for this assessment. I'm going to use this setting today just to kind of keep things simple. And now before that student can get to that Canvas quiz, we're forcing them through a startup sequence, because what we want to do is we want to make sure that they, first of all, have a working webcam. And that's really the only requirement for the student, is to have some form of webcam, whether it's an external or an internal webcam that works. And this will do both a video and audio check just to make sure everything is functioning the way that it should. And then once it passes, it then takes the student through a series of steps to confirm student identity, because we want to make sure it is indeed the right student taking the assessment versus the student versus somebody taking it on their behalf. And then on the environment check is basically where the student would show their testing environment to prove to you that it's free and clear of any type of external resource that the student might use to try to look up or circumvent the lockdown browser security on their exam, such as having a smartphone out, a tablet, notes, etc. And then additional instructions, just anything else you want to tell your students. Maybe you want to remind them to stay seated, don't get up and move around. Maybe you want to remind them that they've signed the honor code before they've taken the exam. Maybe you want to remind them to find a distraction-free environment. Try to find a place that's free and clear of any people bothering you, or trying to lessen communication between others during the exam. Whatever it may be. You may even allow for a blank piece of paper to be able to work out the math assignment. And then maybe you want them to show that blank piece of paper at the beginning, and then you might want them to show the completed piece of paper at the end. So again, this is just a way for you to have a voice to give some additional information regarding what the expectation is for this particular assessment. So all of this is subjective. If you're not quite sure what to say, we've actually put together some pre-scripted language in here that you can work with. You can either manipulate what we've created and make it your own, or you can delete it and completely use whatever you want from scratch. So you have a couple different ways to manipulate the edit text fields that you see available to you here. Okay, so the explanation took way, way longer than it would to actually do this. Really, it's as simple as just checking a box for the lockdown browser, checking a box for the monitor, hitting save and close. And then now when you take a look at this assessment, you'll see that the week 1 quiz has the lockdown browser requirement in the parentheses, and you're also going to see that both columns are required in green. So that way you know visually that everything is good to go. So now we're going to switch gears, and we're going to talk about the student perspective. All right, so your role is very simple. Your role is basically just to turn on the setting and then you're all set. Now it's up to the student to actually use the browser to take the assessment. And here's the browser. The browser is very easy to identify. It's just simply a padlock icon that shows up on the student's machine. And then this will be the only way that the student can get to that assessment. If they try to get to the assessment using a standard browser or any other browser for that matter, they'll simply get an error message because we want them to use our browser versus any other browser for that matter to take the exam. Because what our browser will do is, first of all, detect if they have any prohibited programs running on their computer that they might try to use to either look up information, share information back and forth, or instant message with their friends. So our browser is designed to shut down all those prohibited programs and then take your students directly to your Canvas site. And then from here, they will log in using their Canvas username and password as if this was a normal browser. They will go into whatever course that they're enrolled in. So we're going to go into our geography course here. And then we'll go to the quizzes link, which is over on the left. So we're going to go to the quizzes area. And then we're going to take the quiz, which is that week 1 quiz. And you can see it even has the LockDown browser and webcam in parentheses, or at the end of the title of the quiz. Now, before I hit begin, what I want to do is share with you up here in the toolbar this Help Center button. What this Help Center button will do, and this is really a great best practice, especially the first time that you have your students use this technology, is it allows the student to do a couple things. I would say the most important piece is the system check. What this will do is it will detect if the student has everything that they need in order to run the technology properly. So it will detect, is your webcam being detected? Yes. Is the microphone also functioning? Yes. How is my latency and bandwidth looks? So I think, one of the biggest things that you're going to run up against is students that are taking fully online courses from home or some other area where they might not have a strong internet connection. It's always nice to be able to control that type of signal on campus, but the reality is off campus, there is no control. It's really, you're at the mercy of whatever the student has available to them. So the good thing about this is this will tell the student, do you have a good enough bandwidth test to take the exam? And if it's good, you should have no problems. If it's poor or if it's fair, well then it at least acknowledges to the student that they need to establish a better connection somewhere. And this would be the same as if this was a normal browser. If this was a completely separate browser, we want the student to be able to make sure that they have a strong enough signal just in general to take the assessment. And that's all this is really doing here, is kind of giving them that visual. But if the student's having any type of technical issue, they can actually report that issue directly to us by clicking on Report an Issue. And this will take everything that's showing up on the screen directly to our support team, so we can work one-on-one with your student to try to identify and address the issue properly. And from this information, we know what institution they're from, what LMS that you're using, what type of software they have running on their program, what other files that they might have running that might be causing a concern. I would say this is pretty rare that you would run into a situation like this, but the point is we will work directly with your students, and we'll have everything we need from this page to better address that with them. So everything looks good, so I'm just going to return back to the course. I'm going to take the quiz. And now if you notice on the left-hand margin of the screen, I'm about to go through that startup sequence. Now the first part is a terms of use agreement, so we're just going to hit agree to the terms of use. Some institutions like to include their honor code there. Hello everyone, this is me. This is where we do the webcam check. So what we're going to do is we're going to record a quick 5-second video, and this is going to do a quick video and audio check to make sure that my webcam works. And that's going to play that video back to me as a confirmation that everything looks and sounds good. And then once it plays it back and it passes, then it'll allow me to go on to the next step. So in just a minute, you should see the video load and actually play that video back to you. So hopefully you can hear that okay. It looks good, it sounds good. In the event I was having a problem, there's a troubleshooting link called It's Not Working over here. And this would allow me to troubleshoot the webcam issue and get things back on track. So I would say webcams are pretty easy technologies. It's pretty rare that you would run into an issue. However, in the event that there is one, we can figure out what the issue is, and then provide a solution on what to do. So basically, by following these quick steps, it'll give you exactly the information you need in order to fix it on your own. Okay? Again, like I said, webcams issues are very rare, but in the event that you did have one, we have these troubleshooting links built in to help you along the way. The next step is a student photo. This is pretty simple, where I just smile for my webcam and I take a picture. I have a form of identification that I like to show, and this is my student ID card. Here's my face and my name. I'm going to show you my testing environment. So I'm going to show you my home office where I work. So I'm just going to show you real quick. Here's my desktop. Here's my keyboard. Here's my mouse. Here's the wall to the side of me. Here's my computer screen where you're seeing today's demo. Okay, so I'm just going to put my webcam back. Now you can have your students show whatever you want them to show. You could have them show your entire testing environment. You could have them show your entire room, everywhere if you like. I feel what's adequate is at least showing things that are to the right or left of you, anything within arm's reach, so that way students aren't able to have devices or things, handy, or something that they can grab, on a whim to be able to grab and look up information. So that's how I feel an adequate environment check is making sure that desktop area is free and clear. Because once you see the final outcome, you'll get an idea of what gets captured. Okay, so the environment check looks good. Finally, these are the additional instructions. This is just telling my students that the following resources are prohibited. Don't talk with others. Make sure you stay in your seat. Focus on your computer screen. If you have an issue, please report that directly to your webcam, and so on and so forth. I'm going to hit continue and then begin. So now I'm going to be in a Canvas quiz. So what you're going to see is the actual Canvas quizzing environment. But we're in lockdown browser mode, which means we are in that high security mode where we're not able to go anywhere but this quizzing area. So if you look in the upper left, I'm not able to navigate within Canvas anymore. I'm completely locked in. I don't have a URL address field up at the top. We've stripped away the web address field. We've taken away the minimize, maximize buttons in the upper right-hand corner. And we've also taken away the ability to close out the browser early. Right-click menu on my mouse doesn't work. Alt-tabbing, function print screen. We block dual monitors. Virtual environments get shut down. So anything you can think of, whether it's a quick launch or shortcut keystroke combination or whatever it may be, the browser's still blocking all of those functions from happening. But what it's not doing is it's not changing or modifying any Canvas quiz settings. This is still a Canvas quiz. So if you like to do, randomization of question order, whether you like to do question-by-question delivery of the assessment, whether you like to do whatever. The browser is still acting as a browser in that regard. It will also support whatever advanced formatting that Canvas supports. So it's not always necessarily a bad guy. It doesn't always prevent you from doing nothing. It does allow you to do some type of formatting if you decide you want to allow it during the assessment. And I put together a couple of examples so you can see what I mean. So I'm just going to go through this quiz very quickly. Point out that in question number 2, I just have simply an embedded image, so you can see what an embedded image would look like. Question number 3, these are just different question types in Canvas that we put together. But in question number 5, we have a word editor. So this would allow you, if you do like a lot of essay questions, we give you the ability to manipulate and utilize all these functions, but we do prevent the student from typing in hyperlinks, of course, because we don't want them to go ahead and Google answers on the web. That would kind of defeat the whole purpose. So again, that's blocking that link from even functioning. Up in the toolbar, there's that calculator. I know we had talked about actually using a calculator, so here it is. This is what it looks like. This is your scientific calculator. You can see it's a little bit more robust versus the standard calculator, which would basically show you about half of what this one would look like over here on the right. So this is what your standard will look like over here. Scientific just gives you some of these other computations to work with over there. And you can either keep it open and then toggle back and forth, or you could just simply exit out of that tab and stay within the quizzing environment. Okay. You also notice in the upper right, again, when I tried to exit out, again, I was prevented from doing so, but you'll also see that there is a camera icon indicating that I'm being recorded. So that way I know I'm actually being recorded by the webcam this entire time. So my webcam has been recording ever since we started the environment check. All right, so now I'm going to hit submit. Students want to give our developers feedback. We give them a voice to do so. I would say it's because it's not necessary. It gets skipped almost maybe about 99.9% of the time. So you can just simply exit out. And everything goes back to normal. Okay, so that concludes the student perspective. So really it's just them using our browser, navigating to the quiz, going through a couple of simple steps to verify student identity, confirm that there's no external resources out that they might try to use to look up answers, and then going in and taking that Canvas quiz. So the whole time they're inside that Canvas quizzing environment. So the last thing I'll share with you is the end result. So you've got to see how easy it is to set up. You've seen how a student would use the tool, but now you want to probably see, well, what gets captured? What data got collected during that assessment? So the nice thing is when you come back to this dashboard, because everything is done from the dashboard, you will now see from the drop-down menu a video review option available. So this wasn't available before, but now that your students have taken the assessment, it is now there. What this will do is give you a dashboard of your entire class. So from here, you'll see all of your students' first and last name, date and time that they completed the assessment, how long it took them, and then you'll even see their grade. So right off the bat, you get some pretty good data regarding this specific exam session. And then the next three columns represent what we called automated video analysis. You guys might know the term better as flagging. And what we're doing is we're using this information and the scope of the student's webcam to see if any type of prohibited activity had actually occurred. So this facial detection percentage represents the percentage of time that the student's face was successfully detected by their webcam. So what you want to see are high facial detection percentages and 0 flags. And what flags are indicating is the number of suspicious or behavioral activities that may have occurred during this exam session. And then the total flag time represents the length of time that this behavior had occurred. So what instructors tend to do is I find that they tend to sort by flags, because that's a really great place to start. Because what you can do is simply look at those who have the most flag infractions versus those who have, 0 or none, and then kind of work your way down the list. So what I like to do is sort by flags, and I'm going to look at the very first one once I can get it to, stop syncing. Just give it a quick minute. It shouldn't take very long. What we'll do is we'll look at the one who has more than one flag. So what we'll do in just a quick minute is here we go. We'll take a look at Elizabeth Cohn. Elizabeth Cohn had 2 flags that accounted for about 22 seconds. So if I want to take a look at her, and keep in mind this is a demo site, just so you know, what you're going to see is some additional information that we've opened up. Up here at the top, you'll get to see these bar graphs. It will show you how long the exam took, how long their face was detected by the webcam, and then how long their student was actually facing the webcam. So if you look under this big video player here, you'll see these flag segments and warnings. And you'll see that we actually flagged some suspicious activity. So if you look at the 2:22 mark for about 7 seconds, this didn't occur for very long, but for 7 seconds, you will see multiple people show up in the frame of the webcam. So in just a moment, you'll see the big video player play, and you'll start to see that there is somebody in the background that's looked to me to be assisting the student during this exam session. Okay, so this happened for about 7 seconds. At the 3:31 mark for about 15 seconds, you'll notice that somebody different is now taking the assessment. So the original student who had signed up to take the exam is no longer the same student. So now it's somebody else maybe taking it on their behalf. And this happened for about 15 seconds. And then the other thing that our technology will pick up is if the student is missing for a period of time. So if the student gets up, leaves their seat, goes away for a period of time, you'll actually know that they've been missing for whatever that period that would amount for. So all of this is meant to give you a guide to determine if cheating had occurred. So if this constitutes cheating, then so be it. Use whatever your proctoring policy is at this point to decide, well, what do we do? Does the student fail the course? Do they just fail the assessment? They get kicked out of the program? Again, that's really up to you to decide what to do at that point. This is just meant to give you that information and that proof that something had occurred. Over to the left of this big video player, you see all these little thumbnails. These are just basically 1 minute time increments of the entire exam session. So what we did is we took that exam, we just kind of chopped it up into these rough 1 minute time increments. So you can do a quick sweep over these thumbnails and also see that type of behavior as well. So you can see at the 336 mark, I could actually see that different student showing up here. But you notice at the 222 mark, I didn't necessarily see the multiple show up in the thumbnail. But if I clicked on this period of time, I could actually watch from here to see if something prohibited had actually occurred. This is typical of what you see. You shouldn't see a lot of activity. Students are looking at their computer screen to take the exam. This is all that should be actually happening. It's pretty simple stuff. So when you actually look at students that have high facial detections, 0 flags, when you open up their information, this is what you should see. You should see not a lot of movement. You should see 0 flag segments and warnings. So basically, you know, this is the type of behavior that should be exhibited during this exam for each one of your students. And this is what you should see for each through. Now, it's up to you if you want to go through and look any deeper. Honestly, if you're not seeing flags and these numbers are zeros, then chances are cheating's probably not occurring. So there's really no need to go in and have to take a closer look. But we're giving you that information if you decide to choose to go in that direction. This process should take no longer than 15-20 seconds. This is not supposed to be time intensive. We don't want you watching videos of students. We just want you to be able to see if there's any type of activity or behavior that's being exhibited that looks out of place. And that's where those flags will capture that behavior on your behalf so you can go in and take a closer look. Okay, and I should have pointed out with Elizabeth, I neglected to do so and apologize. That startup sequence up at the top, that student photo, here's the student's photo here. This is what I had done as when I went through as a student. There's their ID card. If you want to take a look at their environment video, did they follow instructions? Did they show you exactly what you wanted them to show? Then you can take a look at all this information if you decide to do that. So I'm basically just kind of giving you an idea of what their area looks like. It looked fine at the beginning, but towards the end, clearly we saw some behavior that looked out of place. All right, so finally, the last thing I'll share with you is our resources to get started. It's my understanding that you guys might take part in a summer term trial to be able to utilize these technologies. And if so, that's great. We've recorded today's session, so for those of you who need a refresher or might want to review it again before you actually use it, we'll give you that recording to be able to do that as well. But if you go to our website, you can go here at any time, and you can click on LockDown Browser and or Monitor. Doesn't matter which one you click on. Over on the left-hand margin of the screen, we will give you these little training videos, and they're specific to Canvas, and they'll give you a quick overview or how to set up the exam and the dashboard. We also offer these ongoing instructor trainings. So today's demonstration is an instructor training. This might go into a little bit more depth than what we, these trainings that you're looking at on the screen will go in a little bit more in depth in terms of best practices and so on and so forth of how you would utilize these tools. So if you wanted to join any of these sessions, we actually have one coming up tomorrow. We have a couple others coming up in April. These are free. They don't cost anything. They're a group webinar scenario, similar to what we're doing today, but on a larger scale. Feel free to join. They don't cost anything, and they're a nice refresher if you just need something to kind of see before you start to engage with the tools again. And then the important piece is, how do we get started? You know, how do we convey this to our students? What do we tell them? We give you a sample course syllabus that you can use. You can copy and paste this verbatim and directly over to your course description or your course syllabus, so that way your students know exactly what the expectation is before they actually go in and take the assessment using this technology. And then I can't stress the importance of a practice exam. I would say that's the #1 thing I would recommend you do 10 times out of 10 before you use this tool in a real live test, is make sure you set up a quick practice test. And what this will do is make sure that the student has the browser on the machine functioning like it should. It also makes sure that their webcam works, so it allows them to go through all those startup sequence events to make sure that they understand the technology, what it can and can't do, so that way they have a better knowledge of the technology on a practice test versus using something like this brand new on a live test where they might have more test anxiety. So the goal is to make sure if there is an issue, let's have that issue happen during a practice exam versus a real life test. Because if everything happens during a practice exam, it's not accounting for any grade, there's no additional stress involved, we can get everything resolved, and then when you go to take it on the live test the next time, everything should be fine. So that's really the goal of that practice test, is just to get the student acquainted with the technology first before they use it on a real life assessment. And we have the same exact tools for Monitor. These are LockDown browser tools. Monitor has the same resources. The only difference you might see is in the course syllabus. It's going to be a little bit more robust because now we're talking about how to generate a really good video. And that's what you will find down here at the very bottom. This is the additional information that we added for the Monitor piece. Okay. All right, so that concludes today's presentation. If you have any questions, you can use that chat feature. Feel free to go ahead and chat questions along the way. At this point, what I'll do is I'll stop the recording, and then I'll allow you to unmute yourself and feel free to ask questions at this time.